Hello everybody, welcome back to Brian's Mysteries and Adventures on Trail, and today's case was actually requested by two different viewers, and it's a very sad case. It's an unsolved case, and that's why I wanted to do it, so hopefully to maybe help bring out some new leads. And today we're going to be talking about the unsolved murder of Mary Cooper, who was a librarian, and her oldest daughter, Susanna Stodden. And they were hiking along the Pinnacle Lake Trail, which is about 20 miles east of Granite Falls, on the weekend of July 11th of 2006. Mary was only 56 and Susanna had just turned 27. They had left their house in their caravan. Their plan was to hike the other side of Mount Pelichuk, but when they got there, they changed their mind due to fear that there could be more snow on the ground. So Pinnacle Lake is in the Mount Baker Snoqualmie National Forest, and apparently when they got there, there was just a few cars parked at the trailhead that day. Around 10 a.m., the mother and daughter apparently chatted with a couple near the foot of the trail. This guy was apparently a retired music teacher, and the other person was a doctor, and that couple's plan was to hike beyond the lake and scramble a ways up the mountain. They went ahead. Well, that couple were reported hearing what sounded like thunder, but then looking back, obviously they thought it might have been gunshots, and on their way back down was when they discovered the remains. At this point, they didn't realize that another hiker had already come upon the mother and daughter and had made their way down to call for help around 2:30 p.m. and the authorities got there shortly thereafter. This whole family was very familiar with hiking and regularly did the trails along the Mount Loop Highway, and Mr. Stodden, the husband, he was in shock and of course anger, because he went back and forth with both anger and disbelief, because of course the authorities were focusing on him, and that's just because that's what happens in a lot of investigations. They do focus on relatives. Now, early on in the investigation, detective received hundreds of tips, and Stodden himself took two inconclusive, what they say, polygraphs, and he grew more and more frustrated with detectives that were investigating him and searching for other tips, because he obviously knew he didn't do it. Not only that, here this poor man is having to mourn the loss of two of his family members, and he is reported in saying that yes, he understands the way police have to do their investigation, but he'll never understand why they focus so much on him and not investigate other people or other leads. David Stodden has worked for years to try and generate leads. He even got them featured on a deck of Snohomish County cold case playing cards, which are distributed to inmates in hope that they might get information. For those of you that don't know about this program, what they do is they make decks of cards, and on each side of the cards, like for the Ace of Hearts in this particular case, they have the unsolved homicide of Susanna and Mary. And this has really been a very successful program and helped solve a lot of cases. He's also produced all kinds of ads that have generated a few phone calls over the years about a person named Aaron, who reportedly had information about the homicides, and he's hoping that this person will eventually come forward with evidence that these investigators can move forward. I know that serial killer Israel Keys was at one point considered a suspect, but he began confessing to homicides just for the heck of it. The FBI did look into it, but it turned out that it was just one of those things, for someone to get attention, and the FBI concluded that Keys was not involved in these particular crimes. And then unfortunately Keys was unable to be questioned later because he took his own life in jail while waiting trial in Alaska. I imagine it's just so frustrating for Mr. Stodden and his whole family that someone out there is walking free this whole time while he has been in agony and has gone through all this and is still trying to find answers. Obviously, someone out there knows something or somebody that, even if there was no witnesses, usually these people that commit these crimes, they can't keep them to themselves. They usually end up telling someone, either out of guilt or they get drunk, And Mr. Stodden is just hoping that somebody will eventually come forward, because it's been decades now, and he's just trying to keep the investigation active, because according to him, he hasn't heard from the investigators in years. So he's actually started his own campaign of putting out flyers, and my thoughts and prayers go out to this man. And he was finally given another polygraph, and after years he was finally cleared as a suspect, and he feels like the investigators should now focus more on other leads and just start a new case, bring in new investigators. And a lot of times that's what leads to cases being solved, when they bring in a new team of investigators, because a new fresh set of eyes is often what leads to a case being solved, and often it's what generates people coming forward, or they see something that the other investigators didn't. The Snohomish County Sheriff's Office did release a statement saying, quote, "It's absolutely a horrible crime, and we want nothing more than to get justice and find answers for the Stodden family. Our detectives have continued to follow up on every lead and have been working this case since day one." It's hard with these cases because there's a lot of them that happen, and so many go unsolved. And according to these detectives, more go unsolved than actually do get solved, which is really crazy to think about. And in this particular case, Mr. Stodden has done everything. He's worked with psychics. He's had people come out and investigate what possible route the attackers could have taken. And honestly, the big question is why. These two ladies were perfectly innocent on this beautiful day, just out for a hike. What would be the motive? What would be the point? I mean, they weren't robbed. There wasn't anything taken. It just makes absolutely no sense. The statistics, though, really are crazy. About a third of all homicides go unsolved. And another terrible thing is strangers account for roughly only 1 in 5 homicides in America. And that's according to the U.S. Department of Justice statistics. So you're actually more likely to be harmed by a loved one than a stranger, which is absolutely crazy to me and very sad. And sadly, though, that's why in so many of these cases, the investigators focus on the family members, because the statistics, they don't lie. And unfortunately, for the people that are innocent, it makes it very hard on them. According to all the reports and all the newspaper articles that I found, the trail was very light that day. It wasn't that crowded. So you think that the people that were there would have noticed something, maybe a weird character out of place, or after this had come to light, somebody would have remembered something. But no one's ever come forward. And David has been, and his whole family has been, unbelievably cooperative. And usually guilty people, when they're trying to get away with something, they're not that cooperative. And he and his family have been beyond cooperative. All they want is to find answers. And who wouldn't? I mean, this is one of the most senseless crimes I've ever heard of. And it's one of the most bizarre and unbelievable crimes. These two women out for a hike on a beautiful day on a trail that they knew, other people on the trail that they had just talked to moments before. One of the most poignant thing that one of the investigators said during this whole investigation was that a lot of people tend to not think of something being important. They might think like, oh, I saw this, but that doesn't mean anything. And it's a lot of times those little tips, those little clues that are actually very, very important. So anybody who was there that day, remembers anything, is encouraged to call. I'm going to have the tip line, of course, because really, besides that, there's really not that much more information. Of course, they erected a beautiful monument where this all took place, and it still stands today in memory of Mary and Susanna. And I just hope and pray that David gets some closure and some answers. Not just David, his whole family. He's got an extended family, and they all deserve justice, and they all deserve closure and answers. If you have any information, you can call an anonymous tip line at 425-388-3845. Just hope and pray that David continues his dogged pursuit of this, because he's been unbelievably strong, and I think eventually the perpetrator will be caught, because Everything is motive, and it just makes no sense. It was either something just completely random, or people that were on the trail, they met that day, had some sort of altercation with them, or the other possibility is they were followed there. But that really is kind of hard to believe given like all the investigating that was done. I would like to dedicate this video to their entire family, Susanna Stodden, Mary Cooper, of course David Stodden, and everyone else in their family, and everybody who's worked so hard to try and find the perpetrator in this, and everyone who's continuing to work so hard. And I just hope and pray that the perpetrator will be caught. I want to thank you all for watching, as always, and special thank you to co.ag for providing the background music, and I'll see you all in the next one. And like I was saying in the beginning or earlier in this video, if you ever do have a tip, don't be scared to call it in to your local authorities. There's always anonymous tip lines, and honestly, that's how so many crimes are solved. But a lot of times people are just too afraid, or they think they might get in trouble even if they had nothing to do with it. So never be afraid to call in a tip, because it could be the matter of the crime being solved or it not being solved. Despite this terrible tragedy happening in the wilderness, just remember that bad things happen all over the place, and it is very sad, but it shouldn't keep you from thinking about going into the outdoors or going hiking, because honestly, if you look at the statistics, you're less likely to get hurt hiking or doing something in the outdoors than you are just walking through the city. Anyway, I just wish you all a happy week and a happy day. I hope everybody's doing great. Thank you all for watching and all your comments, and I will see you in the next one. Take care.